All right, welcome on everyone to Dunc'd On Live exclusively, at least for the live portion on playback. And thanks everyone who's going to listen on Dunc'd On or Dunc'd On Prime as well. I want to remind everyone that you can subscribe to our free newsletter and get Dan Feldman's daily dunks in your inbox twice per week. And a lot of interesting stuff coming from him. This is the closest playoff series in 25 years. He'll have more detail about that tomorrow. I think tomorrow is when he does the free one. Maybe not. Maybe you have to subscribe to Dunc'd On Brown to get that. He's kind of autonomous at this point.
Mhm.
So let's get rolling here. Pistons Knicks down to the wire once again. Jalen Brunson hits a huge shot. Gave the little Brian Russell shove, just like Michael Jordan did 27 years ago, and was wide open for the game-winning three-pointer. Went early, which could have been a problem if he had missed. But I think were the Pistons out of timeouts? I think they were probably. Oh no, they weren't.
No, they still had one left
because they did
used
advance the ball at the end. So this series is over, and we'll talk about the end and how we got to that point. Pistons blew a 7-point lead in the last 3 minutes, 11-1 run. But what is going to stay with you from this game?
I mean, you already brought it up a little bit. The Pistons, they they had a 7-point lead with 2.5 to go, and only scored 1 point after that. Jalen Duran, who hadn't missed a free throw to that point, though that was anomalous. He's a 67-ish, I think, percent free throw shooter, had gone 8 for 8, and that's the only thing they make.
Yeah. Did you say Jalen Brunson? Because you're making the mistake that I was making because they're both
the Jalen's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Duran, who had a very good game overall, missed one of those free throws. Not that he was the GOAT in any way, shape, or form with this, but I do think, going back and rewatching it when we were broadcasting the game live, I thought that the Pistons were kind of flatlining, that their offense wasn't great, and I do think that the process wasn't fantastic. They got better looks in the close when I rewatched it than I thought I did live.
Yeah, Cade had a couple of shots along the lane line, one of which he completely failed to draw iron, the other of which was pretty close, going left. I mean, that's the thing that'll stick with me here is I don't like Cade was good, but I didn't consider this to be a particularly difficult matchup for a star. Yes, OG Anunoby was someone that he had trouble scoring against in isolation. But he had Jalen Brunson that he was able to go after, and he had Karl-Anthony Towns that he was able to go after. And there weren't that many points in this series when you're just like, Cade Cunningham is absolutely dominating. The Knicks don't know what to do with him defensively. Like, he was the main guy. They would switch things up. Like, he was a problem, but it wasn't like I thought I was hoping to see a little bit more. Like, it wasn't a disappointing performance from him, but it was also kind of just like about what I expected, I would say. And what I expected was that it wasn't going to be good enough and that they're going to lose the series 4-1. Of course, that didn't happen probably for other reasons than that Cade was so good.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the story, like the Pistons played well, they played hard. The series was just ludicrously close overall. But and I think we will see this in the second round. To me, if we're thinking big picture, and I try not to be overly negative when it's except for when it's necessary. To me, this series being as close as it was, more about the Knicks playing below my expectations for them rather than the Pistons playing way above. Pistons deserve credit for what they did and for how close they got. But and yes, I know the Knicks in this game, like their offensive rating was fine, though a lot of that was free throw based. I didn't walk away from this series feeling better about the Knicks. Like in a way, I'm not comparing these two teams. Like the Magic played a really close series against the Cavs last year. Obviously, not the same Cavs team. That made me think less of the Cavs, not necessarily more of the Magic. I think of this series somewhat similarly.
Yeah, I think so. There just were a lot of holes on this Pistons team that came up, and then I thought also that JB Bickerstaff had moments where he was able to paper over those holes, but other times where he didn't do what was necessary for that. I want to get back to Cade though. So what was I talking about there? Well, what did he shoot from three in this one?
Oh, for 8. Not quite in Edwards, but not great.
Yeah, he was 0 for 11 last night. But Cade, that's supposed to be a big part of his game. He was been okay from three in his career, but the Pistons largely stymied his pick and rolls by just going under. And that did put Anunoby at a little bit of a disadvantage, but he still is bigger and stronger than Cade. And so Cade was able to get shots off and score on him every once in a while, but those are probably 40% shots. Not great shots at the free throw line, fading away. Like it let Cade get a little bit deeper, but especially those pick and rolls at Brunson, they weren't switching it. And OG would just go under. There was one play where Dennis Schroeder tried to just plow through him, and OG picked up the foul, and then they challenged it and lost, which I didn't agree with. I thought Schroeder pretty clearly plowed into OG first,
Yeah,
but
I agree.
in any event, so Cade just wouldn't take that shot. Like that was the shot that the defense was giving him. If you're gonna be this all-encompassing heliocentric force, which they obviously need him to be, they don't have anyone else really. Dennis Schroeder is their number 2 creator on this team as of right now. You need to be able to take and make that shot, and every time you're open, you take it. And he lost confidence in that shot tonight, and it was really the Pistons' defense in the second and fourth quarters that got them back into it.
Just so we
Yeah,
have it, Cade Cunningham on the series, 5 of 28 from 3.
yeah,
And he only made one free throw, or sorry, one three-pointer after game 3. He was 0 for 3 in game 4, 1 for 4 in game 5, 0 for 8 in game 6.
yeah. I thought that was a good adjustment by Tom Thibodeau to start going under on him,
Mhm.
and that really neutralized some of those pick and rolls that he was in. And another thing that's going to get a lot of attention is, and we were talking about it on the broadcast, we didn't agree with it. Asar Thompson really was causing problems for Jalen Brunson down the stretch. And Jalen couldn't even really bring the ball up. He was having trouble getting the ball after that. They just, his energy was low. He's got these ankle issues. And then when he would try to isolate against Asar, he got locked down. And then when JB brought Asar back in after Schroeder was getting lit up, Asar locked him down. And then on the last 2 possessions, Asar had some issues. But that was something that I did not agree with, going with Schroeder rather than Asar. Maybe he felt like they're going to have more space to work with offensively. I think Asar just commit some non-shooting foul, and that's why JB took him out of the game. That's what my memory was. I didn't rewatch that quite that far back, but
Yeah, he pulled
yeah,
him after a foul. I have that in my live notes from when we were
yeah,
calling
yeah.
the game.
So, and yeah, I just didn't agree with that. I thought he was really defending him well, and he was worried about him making mistakes, which I do understand, because Asar just has these weird lapses
He had
throughout
one
the
in this
game.
game in the crunch
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Like there's one where he's closing out on Josh Hart in the corner. Okay, you close out a little bit short, but fine. If you're Asar Thompson, you want to pressure, get a steal, sure, go ahead. But he just kind of close out hard, but then he'll do this thing where he's just not in a stance. He sort of holds his arms back and kind of floats. And so Josh Hart just blows by him and sets up a three. Like Asar Thompson should be able to stay in front of Josh Hart if he just tries. And then the other one that you were referencing too.
Yeah, which was one of the huge plays of the game. So Asar is back in the game, and he's done a nice job on Brunson. I think he had blocked him on the last possession. And then the Knicks are able to get the switch. So Mikal Bridges sets a screen on Asar Thompson. I rewatched it twice when in my rewatch right before we recorded to see it. And so they get the switch. Schroeder is on Brunson. And once he is no longer guarding Jalen Brunson, Asar Thompson just completely disengages. He just kind of isn't involved in the play. And it's, of course, a huge moment really, really late. It's Brunson's shooting with about, 30 seconds left, and it's a 2-point game. and Bridges just works towards the basket, as you should do in that circumstance, because an offensive rebound is very possible and very important.
Yeah, he was wide open actually on the roll if
Sure.
Brunson had
Yeah,
had
if he had
seen
even
him
thought
even
about that.
before that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Bridges is open on the roll and then just kind of continues towards the basket. Get Brunson shoots it contested too, pretty well contested by Schroeder. Bridges is right there for the putback. And so if Sar Thompson stays engaged for another 5 seconds on that possession, the Knicks potentially they don't have the passing angle for that pass that wasn't there. And then Bridges has at least a much harder time of getting that putback. And remember, the Pistons are up 2 with 35 seconds to go. If they win that game, they go to a game 7. Like it's Asar Thompson is a very talented player. I'm a big fan of both Thompson twins, but that kind of consistency of effort is going to be very important for him being an impact player, especially if the offensive limitations persist to some degree.
Yeah, it was there was this Towns tip dunk where Asar was guarding Towns. Brunson took the jump shot off the dribble, and then Towns just out sprinted him to the front of the rim. Asar like never even moved. They're just a lot of plays like that. For a young guy, obviously his first playoffs, and then of course he got beat on the last play as well. But again, I don't think
No,
Schroeder would have
that's
done a
yeah,
better job. And
yeah.
I mean Brunson, like he was just laboring so much. You have to give him so much credit on that shot because he just he knew the exact move that he was going to make, and they went and set just like a little bit of like a brush screen. Really what that was wrong is that they brought that screen up too early, and so that's what made him have to go early because he needed to use at least the threat of that screen, he thought. And I honestly, I don't know if you'd ever admit this, I think he had kind of just predetermined the move he was going to make. And I never got a great angle of how much of a shove he actually did get, but Asar was just totally out of the play. He tried to recover and then like stumbled again, and Brunson was just absolutely wide open. And when you hit a three in that situation too, obviously it makes it much more difficult to
And
come
and
back.
and we've talked about Asar Thompson's like foibles in this game. He also was productive offensively, paralleling his twin on Wednesday night with 17 points, all around the basket, 10 free throw attempts, but made 7 of those and 5 of 7. And so like he has the talent, and I mean, what is encouraging for the Pistons is that they do have some of these building block pieces. But as you often expect, it's the whole crawl, walk, run thing. Like they need to get better. Cade Cunningham needs to have more diversity to his offensive game. This team needs more overall talent. Asar Thompson needs to get more consistent at in his strengths and also ideally soften some of his weaknesses. But there is a lot to like, of course.
Yeah, and they missed Isaiah Stewart in this series as well. That I think was a big part of things. Like Paul Reed was fine. Like it was good to have him. Like he didn't kill them in the series, but Isaiah Stewart could have really been a strength for them. He was awesome in game 1 and then just wasn't able to come back. I'm sure that really killed him. Another thing that was huge in this game was transition. Mikal Bridges was 11 of 16 from the field, and he really did most of it just through sheer effort. He was 1 of 4 from 3. And so that was pretty awesome. He was a 10 out of 12 on twos. He had that huge offensive putback that tied the game in the last minute that we just talked about. And he also just ran the floor. He got 5 fast break buckets in the first 3 quarters just by outrunning people.
Mhm.
Like that's all it was. And I thought the Pistons, that was actually like Cade. A lot of times he would be the main guy back because he would make the play at the top. Or take a shot up there, and he just would like let guys get behind him in a weird way where he just like if he took another like 2 or 3 steps, he would have had the angle to cut the guy off, and he just never did. Then Malik Beasley was matched up against Mikal for a lot of the game and just like let him run right by him a couple of times as well with a miscommunication. So that was disappointing. I mean, Beasley was great, obviously, but Mikal Bridges, I was impressed because they didn't really give him the ball that much, and he just found ways to score. I think that was one of the biggest things was that the Knicks were able to get at least something and because their half court offense to me was no better than it ever was, but they managed to just find some things like Karl Anthony Towns was again took 10 shots, had 10 points, 1 3-point attempt. Like they just again did a
Well,
terrible job of using him.
1 3-point attempt, 1 shot in the restricted area for Karl Anthony Towns, and it was
And that was the tip dunk.
that
That
was
that wasn't even off of their half court action.
and then he had 3 free throws, but 2 of those were that weren't in the flow of the offense. It was that tip away, the huge play late where he got the tip away and then got fouled. Like, so
Yeah, and then
he didn't
only
get
made 1 out of 2,
yeah,
but managed to get his own rebound. I would love to see, I actually should go back and watch that to see whether he was over the line or not, but
that was a completely there were a number of just like there were bonker sequence in the other game too. Of course, we'll talk about that. But like that one was probably in some ways the little keystone cops for the Pistons, who again, like they played well enough to win games this series. They played well enough, honestly, to me, to win this series. But like just a couple of those bounces. So that play, Towns misses the free throw. And then Towns gets into it, but then the Pistons like fall over each other. Tobias Harris like trips on Jalen Duren, who's on the ground, I believe it was, and
yeah.
they just lose the ball out of bounds so the Knicks get possession without even really controlling it. And it's just, it happens. There's randomness within a game, but it's just like, I feel like it's a simultaneous thing where it's like the Knicks put to me coaching structurally, all that kind of stuff. They played poorly enough for the Pistons to be closer than I thought they should be. But then it has to be frustrating for like Pistons partisans to be like, they absolutely could have won the series.
Yeah, probably should have. I mean, obviously there was the Tim Hardaway Jr. thing in game number 4. And maybe things change, of course, if the Knicks actually are tied 2-2 going into game 5. You don't know what the butterfly effect of that would have been. And obviously campaign goes crazy in game 1, and the Knicks go on the 21-0 run. The Pistons had controlled that. I thought the Pistons just generally looked a little bit better throughout most of the game. And then like the Pistons just could not score down the end of any of these games, which other than game 4, when there was just like a 3-minute jag where both teams scored every single time. And let's see. So again, I would go back to, I just felt both of these coaches left a lot of meat on the bone. JB Bickerstaff, like what he did with Karl Anthony Towns, I just really didn't understand. Again, like at the end of the game, you've got Jalen Duren guarding Karl Anthony Towns. Like there's a play in the last 3 minutes, especially once they had taken Asar out, they just didn't put Duren on Josh Hart. So Karl Anthony Towns is at the top of the key, and I played it in the intro. Jalen Brunson just stayed on the ball and just dribbled around and eventually used his size, almost fell down, but no one ever really came to help. Like Tobias Harris, like sort of came over for a second, and then Josh Hart cut and he backed away. And like Brunson just dribbled the ball for 23.5 seconds and got a layup inside on Dennis Schroeder like he was playing one-on-one in his backyard. Because again, like Jalen Duren was guarding Karl Anthony Towns 25 feet from the basket. I don't understand why they switched that. Jordan wasn't like about to fall out or anything, and that late in the game, you should go with your best matchup anyway. And you also wouldn't want to put him on, like, I don't think Harris was in foul trouble either, right? So
No,
yeah,
he wasn't. Harris only had one foul.
And then the other thing JB was doing was, and they decided, especially this was in the first quarter when the Knicks went crazy, it had their best offensive quarter. Actually, the Knicks had 2 37-point quarters in this game. But the first of those, a lot of it was they actually ran the Brunson Towns pick and roll. And so Tobias Harris was actually hedging. He was not switching, which is and this wasn't even when they had, like, all right, you take Asar off the floor. I get it, right? You don't want to switch Schroeder onto Karl Anthony Towns. That's fine. That's why a lot of the time, if you're going to go Schroeder on Brunson, you would do it at a time when there's not really, you do it at a time when you don't also have Towns in the game, end of the first, end of the third, which is his usual rotation. But the hedging just wasn't working at all. And anybody who engaged with Towns on a pick and roll just went straight downhill and got in the lane and either set up a corner 3 or would score. That was how a lot of Brunson stuff happened in the first. Then the Knicks just like went away from the
Yep.
Towns Brunson pick and roll again. Like
No, and
it was working incredibly well. And they just like stopped doing it.
there was a stretch, I believe it was in the third quarter. I started sending angry G chat messages to you and a few other people where Jalen Brunson, they had 0 pass possessions where Jalen Brunson just dribbled the ball the entire time and then took a mid ranger. There was one where it was Tim Hardaway Jr. You're like, okay, Tim Hardaway Jr. is not a great defensive player. Then the next one is on Cade, but it wasn't even like there was a screen. It wasn't like there was off ball movement. Like they could have just kept the camera just like singled on the stage. It's like, what are you trying to do here? Like you have these competitive advantages. You have one of the best shooting big men in the league. You have other talented players. I mean, Mikal Bridges was a high usage player for Brooklyn, and even though that was imperfect, he could do things with the ball in his hands. And Bridges, like you look at the 16 shots he took, and you're like, okay, I love that you brought up his stuff in transition because he was barely involved in the half court offense to me. It's just like there's so much that they could be doing with this, and it's part of why we like the Knicks. An actualized version of the Knicks to me would still be the third best team in the Eastern Conference, but there would be a much more viable third best team in the Eastern Conference. I think we're going to find that out in a couple days.
Well, I think the Pacers are actually better than them. But
That's fair.
we're not gonna have a chance to find that out, but I think the Pacers are better than them.
I mean,
The
do you want
the
to
Pacers just get so much more out of what they are.
Can we just by acclamation do Knicks Pacers and then just have Cavs and just have the Cavs and the Celtics play like a best of 9 or a best of 11? I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, we can call Knicks Pacers the play out.
And then no disrespect to the Pacers, but like I mean, the Cavs and the Celtics are quite good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I want to really sit down and think about that Cavs Pacers series. I'm pretty excited for it, but yeah, a couple other things. Malik Beasley went absolutely crazy. I think he had either five or six threes in the first half. Really was getting that movement shooting. Pistons finally were getting out in transition. Like the combination of him and Cade is really good. That's how they're able to get back into it in the second quarter, 38-22, and actually led by one at halftime after 37-23 in the first quarter for the Knicks, and Cade pushing it up, Beasley hitting threes, and Tim Hardaway Jr. was not shooting the ball well in this one. He was 3 of 11, 1 of 6 from 3. Did have a big shot on the baseline that pushed it to a 7-point lead in the last 3 minutes. And he is definitely better defensively than Beasley. They're probably about the same on the ball. Beasley might be a little bit better, but Beasley just has so many brain farts, like I talked about with Bridges in transition, that maybe I could see why you'd have Hardaway in there. But I thought they should have started the second half with Malik Beasley as hot as he was and as the way that he came in and changed the game.
And on top of that, Beasley, that I think that's a part of what I thought was another important dynamic in this game was that Malik Beasley, 6 for 11, all threes in the first half. He only takes 2 shots in the entire second half.
And especially when they weren't scoring. Like, when did he come in? Like, maybe 5 minutes left in the third? It's like, they couldn't score in the beginning of the third quarter. I'm like, get him in earlier. Come on.
Yeah, Beasley came in about halfway through. But yeah, you're right that they couldn't score at all. And it's when somebody's one of your best players, you want to have them on the floor as much as you can. I talk about it a lot in terms of the defensive guys because the offensive guys are, but they needed that, and it's not like Cade. It's not like, oh, you can't play Cade and Beasley together. They've done a lot of that success this year. It was a big part of their first half success. So yeah, I was frustrated with JB Bickerstaff on that front as well.
I thought Towns' defense was pretty decent in this one and pretty decent in this series. He had one stretch where they had him up to touch, but like not being aggressive enough. I want to say that was game 3 in the third quarter where Duran just got like 5 dunks at the rim out of pick and roll. But I think Towns, and then he had that big defensive play as well where he denied the ball in bounds and pushed it all the way down. So now it's not like he was involved in the offense, so he should have had plenty of energy. He did end up fouling out on that last play when they ran pick and roll. Like, yeah, I agree with you, Danny. I thought they had one possession that was atrocious, and then Cade missed a couple of lefty layups, and then he also had the pocket pass to Duran, and he made 1 out of 2. And then they had the the
Oh, well,
turnover
they
on the
had a
baseline.
they had another terrible possession that got sort of saved. So it was basically Schroeder, and they kind of dribbled the air out of the ball. It was right after they kind of built up that lead, but then the ball went out of bounds, and they got a baseline out of bounds play with like 1 second left, and Duran actually got a pretty decent look, but he missed it. But
Yeah.
so that was like that one was a terrible process for like 99% of the possession, but they did get something okay at the end. But it was there wasn't a lot of urgency there.
Yeah, I'll give Towns credit for getting 5 offensive rebounds as well. Like he at least has evolved into, I would say, better than he was the last time he was playing center full time. We'll see what the Boston Celtics think of his evolution in the next round. Of course, let me see if there's anyone else that stands out. I mean, Dennis Schroeder rolled the crap out of his left
Oh,
ankle like really
I
badly.
thought I
I
thought he
thought
was
he
going to
was,
leave the game.
yeah, I thought it was going to be trouble, but and it's going to be really sore. It's probably something that would have been like a 2-week injury, but usually you can play on that right away unless it's like really bad. So he looked pretty much like himself, honestly, after that. Maybe not the guy who should have been guarding Jalen Brunson down the stretch, considering that, but it is what it is. And yeah, Tobias Harris had another nice game guarding Towns. Somehow Harris was negative 23 though in 39 minutes. I don't think that was really his fault. And yeah, Josh Hart also made a bunch of hustle plays. They went to the Haka, Mitch Robinson in the third. That worked pretty well. I had to get they went. Did they go centerless at one point, or did they come right back with Towns? I can't remember
I
exactly. What
think they came right back with Towns. That's what's in my head.
Yeah, let me see. Yeah, let me see if there's anything else that like really sticks out. Brunson is sort of was a
Oh,
yeah.
oh, sorry. Go ahead. I
I was
just
gonna
have this as
say
a note. Go
yeah.
ahead.
It, no, by all means.
While we're
That's the beauty
talking,
of doing this live. We just interrupt each other over and over
while
again.
while we're talking about like the things that these teams could have done differently, and this is a theme in these playoffs. I just have a note that's like, do the Pistons really need to double Karl Anthony Towns when Asar Thompson is the primary matchup on him? Like there were a couple times where that happened, and it's just like it was just the theory of the Pistons defense wasn't quite right to me.
Yeah. There's another play where Asar was guarding Brunson and had like been locking him up all second half when it was 1-on-1. And I can't remember who it was. I think Tobias Harris like sprinted over to double team and they just gave up a layup at the rim out of it. That was it. Just there are a lot of mistakes in this game. It just is not as tight of a strategic series as some of the series that we've seen in the West. I would say, which
Oh,
we'll talk more about, obviously. But yeah,
since we're going through kind of some of the stray notes, too hard again.
it's how can it happen twice in the same series? Oh man, yeah, Jalen Turner. Just at least this one wasn't like going up against like Lilliputian, right? Like it was actually going up against Towns. Like he needed to actually tap it hard to win it and was under some pressure, but yeah, he just hit the ball at once. Now, should someone have run it down him? Maybe. I don't know. He did hit it pretty hard.
Also a couple other so JB Bickerstaff, because in a game that was this close, got a technical arguing a call that was against Malik Beasley that he chose not to challenge, which is those free throws end up mattering. And then there were the low timeouts at the end, in part because Bickerstaff, so he had a successful challenge on a what was a very bad call originally. Tim Hardaway Jr. foul on Brunson. They won the challenge. That was correct. And then later on, 2:21 left. It was like it was a play. I don't know exactly when you see it, like Jalen Brunson hasn't earned the benefit of the doubt necessarily with me. But when we saw the second angle and you've been waiting for this, it was very clear that Dennis Schroeder fouled Jalen Brunson. Like
Yeah.
he just was. And so because of
The
that
first challenge was great, right? That one
fantastic.
Brunson fell down. Hardaway Jr. just pulled the chair on him.
And
Great
I'm really
overturn.
happy Tony Brothers actually reversed the call, because it was one of
Yep.
those where there was some contact, but it was absolutely not a foul in any way, shape, or form. But then the second one,
Yeah, that
when we
was on the
saw it live,
Brunson and one, right?
the second one,
Yeah, they're
I
up 7. I mean, that was probably the biggest completely changed the momentum of the game where Brunson against Schroeder, they'd just taken Asar out a couple of possessions earlier, and he does that same thing on the right side and pulls up for an impossible banker while getting fouled. And yeah, it was an obvious foul. Like, it took him 3 seconds to review it, where because Schroeder was just not running alongside him. He crossed his path, and it was about as obvious as it gets.
and so that meant that the Pistons not only were devoid of challenges, but also only had one timeout left for the final 2:21. And considering how things went a little bit weird, it would have been better if they had had an additional timeout left.
Speaking of timeouts, the Knicks got 2, I guess basically 4 points off of 5 points, excuse me. They got 5 points off of being about to call timeout and then not having it granted. Because the
That's right.
The one, like, John, I think it was McBride comes up along the right wing. They're getting smoked in the second quarter. He points twice at the baseline official for a timeout. It doesn't get granted. Beasley goes for the steal, and it ends up being a foul. Then JB gets. I don't remember. Maybe it wasn't even. Actually, I don't think it was even the bonus. That's why his technical was so ridiculous too. And so, I mean, obviously, that point would have been nice to have down the end. And then later in the quarter, Josh Hart, like Tom Thibodeau, they actually showed him on the screen. He's pointing to, okay, go to the right side. That's where I want the timeout to happen. And Josh Hart everyone sort of starts walking towards the bench. Josh Hart never calls it and then just goes right to the rim and he gets fouled. Let me see if there was anything else that stuck out to me. I don't think so. I think that's about it. So Pistons will do their offseason outlook, of course. I think we'll get an idea when we see the Knicks against the Celtics of just where the Pistons are. I don't expect the Knicks to do very well against the Celtics. And so the Pistons played hard. They have some good young players, but I think they should have been better offensively against this Knicks team. They weren't good down the stretch. I think again that they just kind of missed on certain things, playing certain guys, certain strategies, certain matchups that just maybe could have put them over the top. But they're also going up against another team that I would consider to be a little undercoached as far as a playoff team. Although, like I will say this, like JB, I thought he got more out of the Pistons than Thibodeau got out of the Knicks this year as a regular season coach. And I thought they both just weren't really that great from a strategy standpoint in this playoffs. But Tom doesn't really have like a system offensively that I like that much. But it's also worth noting that the Pistons, part of how they were passable on offense this year is they were awesome in transition. And there were moments where they were good in transition in this series, but that can't be something that you're relying on. It's like a massive part of the ingredient in the playoffs. So, or a massive ingredient as part of the whole. So I don't know what to think. Well, I do know what to think about this Pistons team. I think they're going to be heard from. I would guess they might, unless their team gets better, that they will probably have a regression a little bit next year. The rest of the East might just be so bad that they don't. But I'm just like, this is a nice story. I think basically the same about the Pistons as I did coming in. So that's what we said at the beginning. You ready to move on to our next game here?
Let's do it. And we wondered, this has been the most fun first round series for sure, Nuggets Clippers, and Denver did actually blow out the Clippers in game 5, and we the ebbs and flows, and so wondered what we were going to see. And I thought Ty Lue, especially in the first half, and I thought that kind of helped set the tone. Ty Lue outcoached David Adelman in a very key strategic thing. And it's funny, in a game that, that had starters, that had James Harden play 46 minutes. To me, the key stretch of this game was Ty Lue going small, and especially in that very beginning part, and David Adelman staying big. They got worked in those minutes, and I thought that was definitive.
Well, and also I would say the concomitant part of it, when this is actually something that we suggested after game 5, and it worked, it was put Zoo back up to match him with Jokic exclusively, which is the first time that they did that. It wasn't exclusive. I shouldn't say exclusively because they did go with the small group against Jokic as well, but they didn't explicitly try to bring Zoo in at the start of the second and start of the fourth when they knew that Jokic was going to sit. This, incidentally, this is one thing that I like about the way Mark Daigneault runs things, where he'll just change up when he's going to play Shai Gilgeous-Alexander so that the opposing team just doesn't know exactly what the rotation is going to be and how to run their own rotation.
Mhm.
And particularly does that in the regular season. The playoffs are a little bit of a different animal. But that worked great because Jokic was 5 of 14 when guarded by Zubats. He was really good against him. I definitely thought this was maybe the most physical game of the playoffs in terms of guys reaching in, possible fouls. Now, maybe it wasn't that physical because both teams shot 73% or more from 2 in the first half, but David Adelman was really upset that Nikola Jokic didn't get any calls, only took 2 free throws. I'm surprised. There were definitely a lot of plays where I couldn't tell you a specific one where he did get fouled because I didn't see the replay of a lot of them. There weren't fouls called. That's usually, you only see the ones that they stop play for. But there are a lot of ones where there's a ton of contact, but they did a great job on Jokic. Zubats did. Held him to 5-14 shooting, really kept him on that right shoulder. And Jokic is not that great on his right shoulder. Like, he has found counters there, but at one point he had to go to like a lefty scoop shot. I've never seen Nikola Jokic try that shot in his life. And even the guard, like Batum, was great. They kind of fronted him LA Lakers style, like that regular season game too, and just kept Jokic from getting to his comfort zone after probably about the first quarter or so, I would say, and definitely in the second half. And that to me was the biggest difference, that Murray and Jokic got held down in the second half after they went crazy in the first half.
And we wondered because Denver, part of how they were able to be so successful in game 5 was they had this ridiculous shooting performance. And then they did eventually cool down. They still shot very well from 3 overall. They were 11 to 27, though you'd love to see the denominator of that be a little bit higher. But then they weren't making the mid-rangers. Jamal Murray, he had a good game overall, but it was more in kind of fits, and he had fits and starts. He ended up with 21 points on 19 shooting possessions. And so that's not quite the same as what he did in game 5. And I agree with you. They were letting a lot of contact go. And generally speaking, I think that helps the Clippers. They can be physical, and they have defenders who can put in that kind of contact. And so I thought that made a big difference overall. And I mean, the what is a foul and what is not will be a determining factor in game 7, unfortunately, but that's just kind of the way things are. I thought that one of the other kind of tactical elements that the Clippers were more consistent on. They weren't perfectly consistent, but they were more consistent, was like making sure that the right players beat them in the right places. So, like
Yeah.
they were doing a better job of, like, Christian Brown took 4 3-pointers in this game. Only one of them was a corner 3. Russell Westbrook in this game took 0 corner threes. Like, they did a better job of kind of executing some of those fundamentals. Now, I think the Clippers should have been better at those sorts of things earlier in the series, but there is a better late than never element that really made life easier on them defensively.
No, that's a great point too. And they were able to show a little bit more help. They were willing to switch more. They also went small, obviously, but it wasn't with Ben Simmons. It was with Batum guarding Nikola Jokic. And again, like, those guys did a pretty good job. And then, like, Batum was really good as a secondary rim protector at times as well. Derek Jones Jr. would come in from the side and make plays quite a bit too. And really, the Clippers didn't shoot well from 3 in the first. And then in the second half, they shot better, but they still had a lead after the first half because they shot 79% from 2 and got to the foul line a little bit more. And also, they won the turnover battle by quite a bit. As much as you want to talk about Harden dribbling the air out of the ball at the end, probably the reason that they survived, even while playing prevent offense, was that they just ran the shot clock down to 23 on every possession and at least didn't turn it over. The Nuggets got a few fast breaks, like on blocked shots and stuff, but they at least weren't turning it over. So, also, Ty Lue started Nick Batum in the second half,
Yes.
and I was pleased that he went that route rather than Derek Jones Jr., who also had struggled to make shots in the first. And that was like a big turning point as well because the DeAndre Jordan minutes, he wasn't really moving at all, but he was able to hide on Derek Jones Jr., who missed 4 3-pointers in the first half. And then when they brought in, I think they brought Norm Powell back in to really go 5 out, and that's when they blitzed him.
Yeah, it was a layup line.
Can I do a brief rant about DeAndre Jordan here? I
Go ahead.
realize
The floor is yours.
I know that this is certainly something that I've said before. Many people have said it before. And it's one thing if the guy just can't move and just like doesn't understand how to give high effort. But you see what he did in his stint in the fourth quarter of game 5. He was stunting at the ball. He was playing active pick and roll defense. He was sprinting the floor. He was jumping for rebounds and blocking shots. He was even getting out on the floor a little bit defensively. Like he was actually moving. And this was after he had his usual total post performance, like just standing there like a post. And I remember when my buddy who's in the Army graduated from college and went to a state that I will not reference here, and he's like, "These people are just posts." And but anyway, like that's what DeAndre Jordan is. He's just a post out there. But so like why, if he's capable of giving you what he gave you in that game 4, and he's had like moments every once in a while with the like why is he, or sorry, in that fourth quarter game 5, like does he not see the difference between these two things that he's doing? He doesn't, does he not know when he's giving good and bad effort? I just don't understand how a guy at this age could just like, does he just not have it at certain times and he comes out and he's more motivated? Can no one point this out to on film?
Well,
Is he
I mean,
like, what is going on?
Aaron Gordon pointed out to him during the game. There was the play where
Yeah.
DeAndre Jordan just didn't react to the ball, even though he was not guarding Derek Jones Jr. and just didn't do the only thing he's supposed to be on the floor. And to phrase your point slightly differently, as somebody who analyzes these, and this is how I am in other parts of my life too. I get so much more frustrated by won't than can't, because if somebody
Yeah.
can't do something, then there are limitations, all that sort of stuff. If a player X is just unable to make threes or just the randomness within life, but if you have the physical or mental capability to do something and just don't, well, then there are two things. It's on you, but in some ways it's also on the coach, and that's why I chose to start my kind of riff on this game with Lue and Adelman in those minutes, because Ty Lue, and you did a very good job bringing this up in the live show. Ty Lue, one of the things that I think makes him an entertaining playoff coach is that, unlike a lot of coaches who have a defensive bent, Lue often, when he gets his back against the wall, he turns to offense. Like the Bogdanovic played a big part of this game. It leads to things being more fun. And Adelman there were two problems with it. One, the process of bad DeAndre Jordan just isn't good enough. I mean, he had this huge stretching in game 5, but that notwithstanding. But the other part of it is you have to be able to move quickly, especially in a late stage playoff series when something isn't working. And so even if you got outmaneuvered, DeAndre Jordan's in, he shouldn't be in. Well, then you take him the hell out and you put somebody else in there.
Like immediately. It should have taken one possession, if that, or you just see who they had, and then you just say, "Hey, Peyton Watson, come on in." Right?
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh well, maybe the way they're getting outmaneuvered is that they just played Aaron Gordon the whole first quarter and he just can't come in. But they actually had Aaron Gordon out there. So why do you sub in Peyton Watson for DeAndre Jordan? It's pretty easy.
And then they did that in the second half. And yes, the Nuggets were outscored in Peyton Watson's minutes, but he made a difference. He
made a couple of blocks. Like, yeah.
Also had a weird missed dunk, but that happens. There were a number of weird missed dunks and layups in this game. Most of which by UCLA alums, but I don't need to talk about that. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
But Peyton Watson, it's it's just such a natural thing. Watson is a better player. And he fills in. He can be a he can be a rim protector. He meshes better with what Gordon's doing out there. They're also a slightly more viable offensively. It was infuriating.
I was surprised David Alman went 44 minutes for Jamal Murray and 42 for Jokic, given what the state of the game was, especially that they were down 14 in the fourth quarter. I that will be interesting if his guys run out of gas in game 7, which we've seen them run out of gas in a game 7 before. Uh, I guess the other thing we talked about was starting Batum in the second half. He had 3 blocks and 2 steals. You might even argue, particularly because Dunn didn't do much defensively in this game either, that they might also be better defensively with Batum, just because they have more size. Batum then can guard Aaron Gordon a little bit more. He still also would like guard Murray and try to deny him the ball and stuff as well. He could switch on to Jokic. He's got a little more size there. And then if he gets switched out of the main action, he can make plays as a help defender and also just give you more on the boards as well and not uh, require Kawhi to do as much. I thought the Nuggets tried to get James Harden involved more on the defensive end, and that went reasonably well. More they did that more in the first half, but Harden had probably the best playoff quarter he's ever had, and maybe even this game was the best game that he has ever had in a game 5, 6, and 7 as one of the main guys.
Especially in the context of it not being like a blowout or anything like that. There were some where he had big statistical performances, but it was just a game that when it got out of hand pretty quickly. And Harden, yeah, had 17 points in a quarter, had the step back going at a moment in time as well. He was only 3 of 8 from 3 overall, but he had it in a couple of key moments. And Harden, he only sat for I think it was a minute and 35 in the entire
Yeah.
game. And it was in the first quarter, played the whole rest of it. And I don't know that, I've criticized other coaches for this recently. I don't know that that necessarily helped, but having some stability, the other one of the other ways that the Clippers have been effective in the series, and that Denver doesn't force ton turnovers, is that they never turn it over. And so the 8% of their possessions, which is super duper low, and Harden really helped with that. And there were times that he got exploited defensively, but I don't think it was like it wasn't giving the Nuggets a ton of offensive life. They have enough talent for that anyway.
Yeah, the Nuggets also got transition going in the first, but their transition frequency was pretty low. This was a very slow-paced game, even before Harden dribbled the air out of the ball in the fourth quarter. 89 possessions. Both teams were still very efficient offensively, and much more so the Clippers before that fourth quarter, where they kind of tried to play the prevent offense.
Something else I want to praise Ty Lue for was that Derek Jones Jr. He was on the floor, missed those 4 3-pointers, and with Batum starting the second half, we wondered who Lue was going to play in his rotation. And it was reasonably kind of, you'd say, obvious because of how good he is as a player, but like I was happy he went back to Derek Jones Jr. because
Yeah,
the way that Derek Jones Jr. failed in the first half was not something you expect to repeat. Like he'll miss some shots, of course, but like he still competes defensively. He still has length. And he was, he did well in the second half. And that
yeah, made 2 huge corner threes.
2 huge corner threes, but also was opportunistic defensively, was bothering guys. Like there was also this bizarre situation where like they it seemed like the Nuggets chose to screen Derek Jones Jr. onto Jamal Murray, and then he forced the tough jump shot. You're just like, what is going on here?
Yeah, he
Um,
is one of the toughest guys for a guard to get a shot on in the whole league because he's so long and he knows angles pretty well, and you can't really get into his body that well. Like he probably guarded Anthony Edwards better than anyone in the playoffs last year. Thought he guarded really well in the Celtics series too.
yeah, and if they advance, then he'll be a fascinating wrinkle for Shea, but we don't know if that's going to happen yet. And so
Yeah.
but
Oh
I
yeah,
liked.
he guarded Shea really well too. That's right. I forgot about that.
Mhm. And so I liked that, and I mean, Chris Dunn has been a wonderful defensive guard overall. He not only was the offense not working, he took 3 threes and missed all of them, but also like just had some foibles and had a foul that was unnecessary, that kind of stuff. And so moved off of that. And that Chris Dunn could play a part in game 7. I hope he starts Batum in game 7 because Batum was better. The other thing that Nikola Batum brings to the table, he's, of course, a more consistent three-point shooter than Chris Dunn, is, and it's funny because Chris Dunn, point guard out of Providence, Batum, the ball never sticks with him. And not that Chris Dunn is like Batum, he's just such a good connector. He's such a good decision maker in every facet of the game. I think it makes the Clippers, and we talked about this like 2-3 years ago when Batum was there, that it just gives their offense a slight bit more pop. And I think that's even more true now than it was in his previous Clippers tenure.
Yeah, before they got James Harden to
Yeah.
slow him down even more. Kawhi, they tried putting him on Murray a little bit. That didn't work. He can't really get over a screen anymore at this point in his career. But he had 27 points, 11 to 22. I thought he took some bad three. He took a couple of like really contested threes over Peyton Watson. But when he worked into the lane, he was pretty much imperturbable again. This was probably his second best game of the series, I would say, from a scoring standpoint. They only played him 39 minutes, interestingly. I thought they should have maybe gone to him a little bit more when Harden was just clearly out of gas in the fourth quarter. I mean, they went at Jamal Murray on pretty much every single play, and I thought Murray held up reasonably well. I mean, for him to have his offensive load and have to play 44 minutes, maybe that's kind of why he wore down offensively. And this one, I thought Murray also had a pretty good passing game again, just like it in game 5. Jokic was pretty bad as a rim protector. As much as he's underrated defensively in some ways, the fact that he's, like, there and he can't just put his chest in front of guys and jump, like, it doesn't matter that you get off the ground. It just like, his chest is huge. Like, if he just got in front of guys and jumped 3 inches off the ground, like, they wouldn't be able to finish over him. He just will kinda get there and then either swipe at the ball or just back away. And, yeah, I know he's worried about fouling, but, like, if you jump straight up, you're not gonna commit the
Well, and
foul.
it was most egregious in the third quarter. The Clippers scored 32, where Jokic had 3 fouls and didn't want to pick up his fourth. And that's, as you said, justifiable. He's the most important player on his team. Don't want to do that. But there are ways of defending without fouling, and there are ways of defending without fouling. Like he was just conceding everything. And Aaron Gordon can clean up some stuff, but he wasn't necessarily in position. He has a lot of big defensive assignments. If you're guarding Kawhi Leonard, you can't really fly around and be a help defender in the same kind of way. And so Jokic, he had some responsibilities in that circumstance. And the Clippers, let me pull up what their shot chart in the third quarter, the Clippers 6 of 7 in the restricted area, 9 of 11 in the paint. And I think Jokic was to blame for a number of those. Just not necessarily like it's like he's not going to become Rudy Gobert out there, but deter some stuff, contest some stuff. It was very dispiriting.
Yeah, I also thought Norm Powell was really good in this one. He got 39 minutes, didn't get taken advantage of as much defensively. And that's the Nuggets ended up with 10 offensive rebounds, but most of those happened, I think, in the fourth quarter. Like they had 3 offensive rebounds through, I think, late third when I looked at it. And Powell didn't get taken advantage of as much that way, and then got out in transition quite a bit. He had that huge two-handed dunk that I really enjoyed. That was just like a great power dunk off at 2 feet. I love when a guard like that guy's size just like comes up and just he like dunked it like Shaq. It was awesome. But he had 24 points. It was a throwback to his ultra efficient ways early in the season. Took him only 17 shooting possessions to get there. Only had 1 turnover. His floater is a great weapon in this series against Jokic because Jokic, you don't want to get all the way close to him because he might knock you off balance or get a strip. But Powell, he's so good on that floater. Like it looks like he's almost like shooting it down into the basket because he gets off the ground so much. And so there's no way Jokic is going to block that shot if Powell can get the initial attack going to his right hand. And he also even went left a little bit. Like the Nuggets have been doing a pretty good job of directing the ball in the last couple of games, but Powell was able to still be effective and yeah, just got a little bit of transition going for the
Oh,
Clips.
just to confirm your memory, 8 of the Nuggets' 10 individually credited offensive rebounds were in the fourth quarter.
There you go. All right. Yeah, so that was kind of part of how they were able to make at least somewhat of a comeback. And Michael Porter Jr. had been good in games 4 and 5, -24 in 24 minutes, only had 5 points. Just was not able to be as active, only got up 1 three-pointer, which is solid for the Clippers to not allow him to do much more. Like, the Clippers weren't really helping very much, like, right at the beginning of the game, and then they just started bringing more help later on, and I think they wore the Nuggets down reasonably well in this one, and my ultimate concern for the Nuggets is just, yeah, I don't the Clippers, maybe if they're if Harden and Kawhi, like, don't play that well, I think that the Nuggets are okay. But if those guys are playing, at kinda 75% of what they could be, I mean, I guess that's a poor way to say it, but if they're, like, playing their average or above game, they just cause so many problems for Denver, and, like, yeah, the Clippers shot this amazing percentage from 2 until they started dribbling the air out of the ball. They still finished with a 124 offensive rating, and that's while going 12 of 39 from 3. And they didn't really turn it over. The Nuggets weren't able to turn them over much.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of ties in for me, and we won't do a full like game 7 preview, but somebody asked like who would you pick? And it's like home teams have an overwhelming statistical advantage in game 7s. They're 75% historically. I think that the Clippers have they have a much better than average chance, but they're still fighting against some pretty steep historical odds there.
Yeah, in recent years, though, like, because that number, I think, was like
It was in the
79,
80s, wasn't it? Yeah.
80% in like relatively recent years. So teams have won road game sevens more recently. The Denver Nuggets lost a home game 7 just last season. And yeah, if this were on a neutral court, I probably would pick the Clips. Like, James Harden actually had a good game after game 4 in a series. Like, that's again, like, the matchup is pretty decent for him. We'll see what kind of energy he has down the end. They're going to turn it over a few more than 7 times. Russell Westbrook has had 2 good games in a row. Is he going to turn back into a pumpkin? He also will still have a couple of inexplicable turnovers and a couple of missed layups as well. Like,
He actually slowed down to make a layup in this one, but then also missed a dunk. Or was it a layup? He missed one like clean shot over the
yeah, he,
basket.
he missed a couple of layups too, but it was still 5 of 10, 2 of 4 from 3. It's going to be this game, I think, is going to be very ugly and very weird and very slow. David Adelman went to the lobbying on behalf of Nikola Jokic. Is he going to get more calls? It seems like he just wasn't getting the off-ball foul calls. They were just, he said basically, if you're being guarded by a guard, apparently you can do anything. So he's like, oh, we'll look forward to hacking them as much as we want to in the next game. Anything else that stands out to you for like adjustments or anything like that?
Hmm. I mean, I think we saw a lot of the Clippers like good to great adjustments in this game, and they'll
Yeah.
probably have to do some counters to what Denver does. But I mean, if Adelman's not going to change Jokic's rotation, then I think it has to be Gordon and Watson that are out there in those minutes. That's your best. That's your best chance. And I love the Clippers going heavily offensive in those groups and just basically seeing what you can do. But I think Gordon and Watson has to be the combo.
Yeah, give me more attacking James Harden with Jamal Murray because, James Harden is going to go at Jamal Murray on the other end. One thing I hated from both teams in this game was double teaming up top with 5 seconds left on the shot clock. Like, you played great defense the whole possession. You want to double team, do it with like 2.5 seconds on the shot clock. Like, there was one play where Harden he's still hadn't even begun his attack yet. There's probably 5 on the shot clock, and they bring the double off Kawhi. So they just rotate out of the corner to Kawhi. Kawhi moves it to Derek Jones Jr. and you just got a wide open corner three. It's like, dude, whatever you think James Harden is going to do with 5 seconds on the shot clock, it's not going to be as good as a wide open Derrick Jones Jr. corner three.
Well, and you know that Harden's going to make that pass if you throw the double from a place he could see easily. And so it's not like you're catching him unawares.
And then they would do the same thing where down the end of the possession, Jamal Murray would run the pick and roll for Jokic, and they would blitz Murray and then throw it to Jokic, and Jokic still had plenty of time to dime up a corner shooter or do something. Like, no, like the beauty of it is like you've already prevented them from creating a great shot. Like they're gonna have to shoot some kind of ISO jumper. Yeah, it might not be against the absolute defender that you want, but you've still done your job, particularly with all these great offensive players in this series. Zubats continues to be awesome on Murray as well. We got asked in the live playback, is this the best defender we've seen on Nikola Jokic? And I would say yes, since he's really come into his own. Like 21, DeAndre Ayton was pretty good against him. That was such a limited Nuggets team. But part of the job into being the best Jokic defender is you also have to be able to switch on to Jamal Murray when required. And he's able to do that. Jokic can't really move him and go through him. And Zubats has been pretty decent getting out to the arc. I also thought that the Nuggets had a bunch of chances late to take threes and just didn't take them, down by 6, which was really annoying. Like, I think Jokic needs to be more aggressive from 3-point range. He was 2 of 4 in this game. I thought he passed up some, like particularly because this is just such a hard game and such a hard series that if you have an open shot, just take it.
Yep.
Just take it and go back on defense. And because it also really has a deterrent effect to prevent, or you're going to force Zubats to switch on to Murray, and then you can get a small on you, or you could shoot over that small, or if they want to stay conventional, then you can shoot over Zubats closing out. Like that to me is where Jokic has the biggest advantage. The other thing too is Jokic, not really any system buckets, like those little cuts, face cuts. We haven't seen a ton of that stuff really. He's not able to really like duck in. He only had 1 offensive rebound in this game too, which again, he's being asked to do so much. It's hard you're taking away some of the plays that he gets through his effort at this point in the series. So I want to see if some of that stuff can come back. We didn't, as well as the Nuggets played, they did not really get a ton of just like little cuts of the basket or anything like that. But
and we'll see how big a story fatigue is, because Game 7 will be less than 48 hours. It's going to be a 4:30 Pacific tip, and then of course traveling from LA to Denver.
Yeah, you lose an hour there as well. I think it's going to be epic, though. I think it's going to be close, and it's going to have some heroic performances that we'll probably be talking about for a long time. Very quickly, if you are a Thunder fan, I think you should be rooting for the Nuggets rather than the Clippers.
I just wanted to mention that in case anyone was wondering, we will be doing that game on playback on Saturday.
That is a good mention. Absolutely. Playback.tv.
So join us. Tell your friends to join us. Tell your friends. It will be a lot of fun.
Okay. Tomorrow, we will not be live on playback because we will be in Chase Center for Game 6 of Rockets and Warriors. And we will talk to y'all after that game is over. Till then.